Hey everybody, it's Ben here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. What we're talking about, and even the format, as you can see, I'm not in my garage or somewhere working on a project or an electric car. Instead, we're in my home office because that way I'm on my computer. Because what I want to show you is what I've been doing this past year, 2020. And 2020 has been a weird year for so many people. Obviously, COVID was the big thing, but there's been a lot of other crazy stuff going on as well for everybody, including here in my life. And because of that, I've really gotten kind of behind on my projects, blogging about them, posting the videos out to YouTube, sharing them. And so in the near future, you're going to be seeing some YouTube videos on my channel that are going to feel out of order. You're like, hey, that thing looks like it was shot in summer. It's winter now. What's going on here? And what I'm trying to do is just catch up on some of these projects, but I want to do a quick share of a bunch of the things that you've missed this year, because I haven't been able to stay on top of all this. So what I want to do is go back into my my photo album on my computer as kind of like a quick year in review to show you all my 2020 COVID projects. So we're going to start back at the very end of January 2020. Let's kick it over to the photo album here and go through that. So at the very end of January, I hopped in a Tesla to carpool from Chicago to Austin, Texas, because down there was something going on called Fully Charged Live, which was a very cool event. Ahead of time, I got to check out the Rivian truck. They actually had two different trucks there. Very cool to get to see. I actually did an interview with the head engineer from Rivian. I've got that footage. It hasn't been edited together yet. It hasn't been posted yet. It's one of these many things that I've got that I'm trying to catch back up with. Some really cool projects. Everything from like the high-end fancy Teslas, everything like that, to converted Datsun. Here were some really cool well converted classic bikes converted over to electric. I thought those were really neat. Just using a hub motor pretty much blends right in. And of course, really it was the people down there that was kind of cool. The Fully Charged Live, it was kind of like a big reunion sort of a thing. Got to see a lot of great folks there, meet some new friends. Did an interview about this electric motorcycle. There we go. Please stay off. Got to meet up with some other friends like Nikki and the other folks from Transport Evolved. Chelsea Sexton, who's she's a real rock star of the electric vehicle world. Got to see an EV1. Jehu Garcia, Rich Rebuilds, a couple other folks around there. Even just driving down there were all sorts of cool cars. We're driving to the event and it's like, was that an i8? Just kind of cool things like that. So it was definitely a lot of fun seeing the vehicle, seeing friends. Let's see, here's James K. He's got a YouTube channel. He was doing some cool battery trailer projects and some other things. I'll put links to anybody I mention. I'll put links to their YouTube channel or webpage in the description, so make sure you check those out. Got to see some of our other Pacific Northwest friends there too, which was pretty cool. Just a neat event. And I shot a bunch of videos kind of on the way down and on the way back. Some of those like little quick ones, I did post those out to YouTube, but I've got a number of videos still, some interviews and things like that, that I definitely need to edit together and get out there. Actually, on the way back was pretty cool. We stopped in Kansas City at a friend of a friend, and I picked up a nice big DC motor and really had no idea what I was going to do with it exactly. But the guy was, a little older. He was probably getting out of the physical work of conversions. And so he gave me this great GE Bradley Automotive DC motor. And now I ended up getting that out to a Chicago area team that's going to be entering 24 hours of lemons with an electric vehicle conversion. This guy also had some wheel horse tractors, which were kind of the later version of the GE Electrak. And he also had a really nice solar array in his backyard. So it's always fun to get to see other people's solar setups. This one's a ground mount. I've seen a lot more of the roof mount style solar, but boy, was that neat just to get to check out somebody else's system, see how it's all wired up. And we're going to take a look at some more solar that I worked on this summer as well. Oh, he even had this was a cool one too. This is a John Deere electric tractor. So it's a rear engine style tractor. This was I think it was an Electric 90. Let's see if we got a better angle on this little guy here. Yeah, here we go. John Deere Electric 90. So that was cool getting to see a different brand name of retro electric tractor. I thought that was pretty cool too. And then the other stop on the way back from Fully Charged Live was actually meeting up with M. Paul Holmes, who you might remember from the good old days on EcoModder with the open source, the Open Revolt open source motor controller. And Paul is a neat guy. First of all, he's really nice, really humble, just nice guy. He's really smart when it comes to the motor controller stuff. Although he's not articulate about it, but the work that he's done has been some of the coolest things. I mean, his garage just had all these parts in it, and boy, you know, I just can't say enough about kind of his hands-on approach working on some of this. While I was there, I got to take a look at one of the older style of the Nissan Leaf electric motors. I can never remember the name of this one. The EM57 is the later one, so the earlier one is the EM63, I think it is. Something that's interesting about this motor, though, is you see these orange cables here. So it's got a short set of cables that goes between the inverter to the motor, whereas the later setup, the inverter just stacked right on top of the motor, directly connecting with some bus bars. And while we were there, we actually kind of ended up working on the motors a little bit. I kind of said, hey, what's on the back end of this motor? And he was like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. So we pulled the end off, got to see the bus bars, got to see where the encoder is on the back of it. Just a lot of cool things. It was just kind of neat to check out some of the equipment. Paul also had a particular clutch plate on there, which I thought was interesting. He used a different one than I did later. I don't remember. I'll have to give him a call which one that was. He was also working on some, I don't know, kind of top secret stuff I couldn't really talk about at the time, but basically working on some cool motor controllers, a commercial project that has some pretty neat outputs on it. And I'll have to call up Paul and see if he's done with that yet, see if I can share some of that, because it was really pretty cool. Yep, there's the bromance photo right there. And there's just us with Carl's Tesla. But always good to get to see folks like Paul. Rest of the trip back was uneventful. I was starting to feel better. I was sick on the way down there, which was pretty darn crummy. Here's just a couple more photos. I don't know why they're out of order here. From there we are. Me with Chelsea, who's super nice, very accommodating, super cool lady. The EV1. Transport Evolved, a whole bunch of Tesla Roadsters. I got to try a rad power bike, which their cargo bike was actually really cool. I really liked it, and neat kind of a setup. So it was a lot of fun being at that event. There are just a lot of cool things going on there. I have tried to keep up with my power bill with the solar every month, just sharing what I'm paying or not paying for electricity. So every month I've really been trying to do those power bills. People seem to like that, just to see what does solar really do for you kind of a setup. I'm going to show you one thing here just because it kind of comes back to us later. This was back in February. There's a local kind of a wildlife rehabilitator and educator nonprofit that we try to go to their annual fundraiser. And I kind of forgot about this. They had both a skunk and a possum there. So it's a fun event. You go there and kind of get entertained a little bit by the animals and all, but you know, leave a donation. We'll come back to that in a little bit. My daughter did a cool crystal kind of a project for her science fair, growing crystals. Actually did a nice job on the presentation and everything else. So she and her lab partner were growing crystals. We won't get too much into that, except she wanted a way to light up the display of crystals. And, you know, because I am how I am, I had some random parts sitting around, including some 18650 batteries and some LED tape. So we actually rigged up a cardboard box with the LED tape inside and the batteries, and it really did a nice job lighting up the crystals, which is kind of a fun thing. You can see how cool these look when they're lit up. I thought that was pretty neat. So, you know, she got to play with crystals, and the both of us got to play with electricity, and frankly, that was pretty fun to be able to do that. Okay, here we go. So mid-February, I was able to go pick up a Nissan Leaf electric motor. This was at a junkyard. It was only maybe an hour drive from my house. The price seemed reasonable on it. And I wanted to get this motor to see if it would work for the tractor conversion project. Even if it didn't, it's still a cool motor, could be used for a lot of other projects. And picking that up, it actually does fit in the back of a Volt, which I thought was hilarious because it looked like it was a weird rear engine car at that point. But neat piece of equipment. So I was able to bring that home and, you know, started doing some work with it. And you've seen some of those YouTube videos lately with the Thunderstruck VCU, testing regenerative braking, all of those things. But for a good hunk of the summer, this was just kind of sitting in my garage, and we'll get to why that was as well. February, I got to go out to New York for the toy fair. That was actually pretty cool. At the Javits Center, I was helping out our friends at Brown Dog Gadgets, who do some really nice hands-on educational electronics for school kids. But it was cool when I had a chance to walk around at the event that there were some other things like these snap ships. My sister is actually a graphic designer for that company, and it was really cool to see something that she had been working on there. Very cool that way. I also saw a company that had a neat little folding electric bicycle. This thing folds up to like nothing. It was kind of a little challenging to ride the first time just because the steering is a little bit different than you would normally expect on a bicycle. But it was kind of fun to get to ride that. And again, that was, you know, I did some short videos, so that was the sort of thing that I was able to get out onto YouTube right away. But what else was interesting about that event was what they called the China Pavilion was canceled. I mean, this is a huge conference center, and the biggest single section of it is all these importers from China of toys, and that entire section was just shut down. And so this was kind of the very beginning of the whole coronavirus thing, was that it was going on over in China, but not here in the United States yet, not in New York. That happened like right after this. So, you know, I got to be in New York and ride around a little electric bicycle, and that China Pavilion being shut down was kind of the tip of the iceberg. It was right after this everything in New York started getting shut down around in my area, and not too much later. So that's when we started getting into the whole quarantine thing. The schools were closing. I was working on projects like the tractor and the Nissan Leaf motor, and suddenly I didn't have any of my resources. The places that I would go to use equipment was no longer available to me. The people I would normally go talk to in person, and you know, just throw around some ideas for, well, hey, how would you do this project? How would you approach this? None of that was available to me anymore. So suddenly I was kind of like totally alone in my garage trying to work on these projects. For my work, all my work shut down. Suddenly had no income. So things kind of started getting really crazy all at once, right around that time period. I did have a friend stop by. This was cool. He, kind of a longtime friend from a local eco car group, he bought a electric smart car. And the guy is tall, and this vehicle is comically small. It looks like a bumblebee. It's yellow and black. The hood's plastic, but it is a blast to drive. An all-electric smart car is. It's got a nice skylight in it. I just took it out around the block, but it really was fun to drive. The hood doesn't even like tip up. You just pull the whole thing off because there's nothing under the hood anyways. Just a cool little vehicle. I live on a corner property. There's a main road right there, so this guy does. Every once in a while, I'll be outside and he'll drive past and honk. So there's Jack in his little electric car, and he's got a plug-in Prius. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jack's got a Prius Prime, and that plugs in, but he likes this thing better. It's cute, it's fun, just a neat little vehicle. So if you ever get a chance to check out an electric smart car, you can't help but smile looking at one of these things. Absolutely adorable. Just a really cool little car. Just other things, not necessarily electric car related or anything like that, but my daughter got a really nice guitar from my wife's uncle for Christmas, and we used the vinyl cutter that I have to put her name on it. Turned out pretty cool. She's been taking guitar lessons, and that's been a lot of fun. She also did something else that I thought was really cool. She's a Girl Scout, and just all by herself, she decided that she was going to do a fundraiser for people who don't have clean water. And again, this was kind of right at the beginning of COVID. And I was like, this might not be a good time to do this. You're not going to be able to go door to door. And this wasn't like an official Girl Scout project or anything, but she found out about other parts of the world, or even heck, Flint, Michigan, where people don't have clean water to drink. So she literally put a post-it on a jar and said, donations for people to have clean water to drink. And she was only taking quarters. So she started fundraising for quarters, and it didn't take that long to really start getting them in. And I did post about this on my YouTube channel. Some people, including you watching right now, did donate it, and it just about I don't think I've been prouder of her than doing something like this, just all on her own, going out there, making it happen. We did only just recently take the coins in to redeem them, just because the banks and everything not having their lobbies open. And it was almost $500 that she raised, which I thought was just amazing, just super cool. Here she is, the Girl Scout cookies, getting out there selling the cookies. But again, for just something all by herself, man, was that cool. I thought that was really neat. Here we are again with the Nissan Leaf motor. I was playing around, seeing if maybe it would work with the tractor, weighing it, measuring it, took it apart. You've mostly seen the videos on this sort of thing. I did think it was pretty cool just to take the transmission apart on the Nissan Leaf. Very cool just seeing how it works inside. Plus, I just love the look of this. It was just so cool seeing all the machinery inside there. Here we go. Here is an electric motorcycle that a friend of the family bought, and it didn't work. There was some sort of an issue with the motor controller. It would work, but only at really low current. You try to accelerate harder than that, and the thing would just shut down. That's all there was to it. But the frame looked really cool, and it was basically a Briggs & Stratton E-Tech motor in there, just like what I used for my electric Kawasaki. And just this cool custom frame, kind of a neat setup. Even had a Briggs little power meter on there. That was pretty cool. It was a Sevcon controller. I had not worked with Sevcons before. It turns out that indeed is what the issue was. Here's some more work on the tractor. Oh, here's another fun thing. In March, our furnace broke, which in Wisconsin, March is still winter. We do have a wood stove, so I was able to keep the house warm for a little while. I figured if we could just get through the end of the winter, we'd be fine. And then maybe I could have the furnace replaced after the whole COVID lockdown thing was done. And that didn't happen. Now, I was fortunately able to find some work. My dad's a residential remodeler, and he had just picked up a job remodeling a lake house, a very small lake house, kind of a cottage, doing a full 9 yards remodel. This was somebody that he had known for a long time. So I got to go over there and do construction work, which was fantastic because my regular work was gone, just gone, zero income when COVID hit. And there was a real rush on PPE. So I'm tearing down drywall and fiberglass insulation and everything. I couldn't even just find a plain mask just to keep fiberglass dust out of my lungs. So, literally I'd have to, I think this is an old piece of tablecloth that I had to tear up and wrap around my face just to not breathe all that gunk while working on construction. So, things started getting really weird, just a weird year. Another fun little project my daughter worked on, which I thought this was pretty cool, Brainy Yak Labs. When we were at the toy fair, we ran into the guy who runs this company. He does these really neat little electronics kits, and they're designed for kids where they get to build something cool, but they also learn about electronics. And he was nice enough to send us a lamp, so we very much appreciate that. And Sophie got to put this lamp together. Had a lot of fun doing it. I highly recommend, if you got kids, let them try things, especially stuff where, they're learning by doing. She had just a blast working on this. And when you let kids do things themselves, they get all the pride of working on it when they're all done. So here's the lamp. It's RGB LEDs, so it's multiple colors, and she just had a blast with it. And then the kid gets to decorate it afterwards, and it's got a bunch of different lighting modes and everything like that in there too. Thought that was pretty cool. More tractor stuff, which you have pretty much seen. Again, it was I was trying to figure out the function of the tractor, how to hold the front to the back. Really a pretty weird project. For my day work, this is what I was doing to pay the mortgage. Rip all this stuff out, put it in a dumpster, try not to breathe it. Nasty stuff, hard work. But then when we actually got to start doing some of the rebuild part, we actually raised the roof. This was a crazy thing. You have to hold the house up while rebuilding it from the inside, which was very interesting to be able to do. So getting back to that electric motorcycle, what we had to do was try to find a controller for reprogramming that SevCon, because it's not software based in that you don't plug it into a computer. It doesn't just have potentiometers. So you actually need like this handheld controller, which we found a place to rent one from. We went through all the settings on there, and we're still not able to get this thing to work. I found a couple of different versions of the manual to calibrate the SevCon. And in the end, it was the motor controller. This guy here, Mark, did end up buying a replacement motor controller, and that fixed it. Later at that point, that is what actually made it go. Let's take a look here. Pretty slick. I mean, electric motorcycles are just a blast, but at this point, it would roll, but you just simply couldn't do any decent acceleration. I mean, you'd twist the throttle more than this kind of a speed, and the controller would just absolutely shut down on you. As far as I could tell, it was probably some sort of a safety feature, misfunctioning. I mean, that's very, very common on so many pieces of equipment. The issue is not that something is working totally wrong. It's just more that it's not set up the right way. But without that proper programmer, it had all these weird settings. Uh, it was not fun to work with, frankly. Um, we looked through all sorts of different information. Um, in the end, it was just replacing that motor controller. Had kind of a cool little custom tank on it too. I liked that. Um, cool project. It was fun to see. Let's see here. A friend of mine got certified by NABCEP for solar. I got certified by NABCEP right before I got hit by that lumber truck. And so actually my certification is about to expire soon, coming up in a couple of months here. And I really have barely gotten to use that because I really can't lift solar panels anymore because of my shoulder, which is unfortunate, and I'm so not excited about that. I do like that in the background here, you can actually see the photo of the original cow car. So when you look at my Mitsubishi iMiEV with the cow spots, the actual original inspiration from that was this. And I encourage you to go on to 300mpg.org and read the story behind it because it's kind of cool. For another EV project, somebody approached me and they were interested in having me convert a Dodge Ram to electric, and not just like a little one of these big trucks. It's got the big diesel in it. Whew. That's going to take a lot of power. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to need some big batteries. And the big deal is the guy still wants it to be able to do, let's see here. We're going to look at this video right here. So here's a diesel truck. This guy wants to convert it to electric and still do this. So right there you can see, I think half of that was diesel smoke and half that was tire smoke. But converting a big truck is a pretty ambitious project. So I've kind of got that in the queue to work on after finishing the tractor, but we've got to get that taken care of first. I got a whole bunch of these solar thermal evacuated tubes donated to me, which are really cool. I just stashed those away for maybe donating to a friend, maybe just using them for a future project. But those are for making hot water. Toilet paper was interesting this summer. Well, this spring, all the toilet paper disappeared. And one thing I found is that I could still get like industrial toilet paper, like the big rolls for, gas stations and schools and things like that. Actually designed a paper winder so I could put it on the regular toilet paper holder, and made an also just a holder for the big giant rolls. Here's my home solar. I've been really happy with my home solar. That's been working out great. We went on to a time of use plan, so my electricity is costs more and is worth more during the day, and it costs less and is worth less at night. What's pretty cool about this, though, is I can basically overproduce solar during the day, get a good rate on it, and then at night I can charge the electric cars off of cheap electricity. So time of use, electric cars, and solar really, really, really go well with each other. In electric lawn care, I've got a friend who I dug up a old wheel horse electric tractor for him, and there was an issue with the lift on the front. So there's a little electric winch that it raises and lowers the mower deck and any other accessories like a snow thrower or whatever you'd have on there. And I ended up having to rebuild it. It had an issue with this. That brass bearing was worn out and gone on one end of one of the shafts in here, and then that ended up making the motor draw too much current and fry. So I had to rebuild this. Little bit of work finding the right parts. This was originally a electric window motor from a car. way back when GE just kind of repurposed a lot of other existing parts for building the GE Electrak. So the same thing with the electric wheel horses. That was kind of the follow-up to that. So that was kind of it was kind of cool to learn about, but also kind of a pain to work on at the same time. But if I ever need to rebuild one, I know exactly how to do that now. Some of the stuff here, even just the drive shaft in there and the little belt, really interesting because it's mechanical stuff, but pretty darn low tech, just really simple off the shelf components. Then getting back to the tractor, I was playing around with trying to figure out how to connect the flywheel to something other than the crankshaft. So here we see the crankshaft. I did a little paper template on my my Cameo Silhouette vinyl cutter, cuts paper and other materials as well. And then I worked up to, I did a 3D model, had a friend 3D print it for me. And then I was able to play around with that, start with just spinning it on a drill, but then working up to actually tapping it out and putting the bolts through to mount it onto the crankshaft on the engine. So it was kind of an experiment with 3D design, 3D printing as kind of a low-tech, inexpensive entry to kind of modern manufacturing. And it actually fit. It took a little bit of work, kind of had to sand it. The original size wasn't quite right. But yeah, I was able to get it to fit the flywheel and fit the crankshaft. So it was definitely an interesting experiment. Another thing that was kind of cool, I know another guy who has a bunch of GE Electrak parts, some of them literally new in the box from the 1970s, graphics package. He actually was friends with the one lawn and garden dealership in the area that sold Electraks. I actually have an Electrak that has the sticker from that lawn and garden center of where this guy got all this stuff. So basically his friend died and willed him all the Electrak stuff. So this guy's got a couple of Electraks, a couple of the electric wheel horses, so many of the components, decks, motors, lifts. I went to this guy to look for replacement parts for that lift. Very, very interesting. And it's really neat history. Just now we're finally getting back to all electric lawn care equipment. And the other thing that was kind of cool, when I was leaving this guy's place, I'm like, wait, what's that? And he had an agricultural building, and in it was a tractor. And I'm like, that tractor looks familiar. And it's the International 300. And it's got the big bucket loader on the front, which is exactly what we want for this tractor conversion that I've been slowly working on. It was kind of cool just to check out how the hydraulics were on there. I don't even remember if I ever posted this video or not. I think I did. I think just as a little bad webcam video. But the bucket on here looked like a really good design. The hoses and the hydraulics for the backhoe that was on this was crazy. It's got those pop down legs on there. And this guy, I don't remember what he said he paid for the tractor, but I think he said he dug 2 septic systems with this setup for other people. And he said that by itself paid for the tractor, no problem. But huge, heavy piece of equipment. And it's literally the tractor that I'm working on, although obviously the gas version rather than the electric that we're trying to do here. And then the other thing too, interestingly enough, right after that, I met another guy with history with the Electraks, and it turned out that in my area lives the guy who was like one of the head engineers for GE for that project, Ken Jones, who's older guy, not good health, but he actually lives around here. He moved out to this area to work for Simplicity later, and he actually gave me his E20. It did need some work, and the one caveat on there was, hey, take care of it, and if I ever stop by with my grandkids, let them check it out and drive it around the yard. I'm like, yes, sir, we can absolutely do that. So I did have to do some work on there. I put new batteries in it. It's got some neat little things on there, like it's got a power connection for some of the rear accessories. It had a horn. I hadn't seen one of these with a horn on it before. It does still have a little bit of an issue with the drive mechanism. I'm still working out. By April, I was getting a little bit of work in video for kind of remote stuff, you know, virtual events, that sort of thing. Not much, but it was interesting just trying to deal with the challenge of some of this remote stuff that we're working with now. I played around with doing a little camera that would fly through the air on a cable, just because I had a, let's see, the Chevy Volt door. I replaced the Chevy Volt door, so I had a door window motor. And so I used the window motor to make a little winch, and I could just have a camera fly around in my garage, which was kind of fun, except it was sort of too bouncy. I think I used that for a shot or two in one of the tractor videos. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. This was here I'm just hot wiring this old window motor on the electric tractor front hoist, and it's the exact same thing I was just doing with that winch for moving that camera around, and kind of it's still the same old technology. I thought that was interesting. This is the wheel horse that I got for that friend of mine. So it's got the mower deck on the front, and I think in this photo we just fixed the steering. It was having an issue where the steering wheel gear and the shaft that would go forward didn't properly engage. They were a little sloppy, and so I was able to put some shims there, tighten up. Then it worked real nice after that. And then, of course, that was our Chevy Volt, which was still pretty new at the time. Well, new to us anyways. Here is my electric push mower. It's just a little 13-inch made by Ryobi, but the thing is I already had, you know, a whole bunch of Ryobi drill batteries, so it was kind of nice just to be able to take the batteries that I already have and use them for some electric mowing. And one of the reasons why I got this push mower is because it's so small and so lightweight that I can actually pick the whole thing up with one hand. And after I got hurt, that was one thing that I couldn't do, was just taking care of the lawn. So with that, I was able to push that around one-handed, which was kind of neat. And it's actually interesting how a lot of electric stuff actually works really, really well for, you know, anybody who's handicapped, or maybe if you're just a smaller person, you can't handle as much weight, that sort of thing. Kind of neat stuff that way. And more tractor stuff. Oh, here we go. So in the end of May, I did get that Thunderstruck VCU. Here we've got the engine totally out of the tractor. Down here you can actually see that electric motor that I picked up in Kansas City. Kind of a tack weld around here, seeing if I could use those side rails I pulled off that other tractor. Figuring out the bolt pattern, how I can connect something on here. And there's that VCU. Again, still trying to keep up with the electric bills. This little rat's nest right here was the start of a solar project. I got a call from a guy who had a lake house, and this is an area where the properties are very narrow. It's like a long skinny strip of land from the road out to the lake. So there's the road, the house, a long skinny stretch of land, and a little boathouse with electricity. And what had happened is somehow the electricity to the boathouse was cut or just stopped working. And the guy was quoted how much it would cost to trench a new line from the house out to the boathouse, and he thought, well, gosh, for that much money, I could probably just put solar panels on there or something. So he called me up and he asked that. He said, hey, what would it take to just put some solar panels on there? And his main concern was he wanted to be able to use his boat lift, which was AC powered. So I went out there, I visited him, gave him a quote. This was a little frightening, just where all this wiring came together. None of it labeled or anything. The conduit down here broken. It was kind of a mess. When I got that Thunderstruck VCU, I did order a couple of accessories with it. I got the pre-charge controller and resistor set up, some miscellaneous wiring, the forward neutral reverse switch, and then here's the release tool and the actual connectors that you got to put the wires in that you then plug into the VCU, and the communications cable. I bought that all at once. I was then also just checking out just some plain old flooded lead acid batteries. Here were some store brand ones that actually looked pretty good for just a real simple solar system. At this point, this is how many quarters my daughter had collected for her clean water project. We started off with one little tiny honey jar that got filled up. We added another one that got filled up. Pretty soon we went to the big mason jars, and she had collected hundreds of dollars of coins, which was really pretty cool. There's her on her electric, little electric ATV. The Mitsubishi iMiEV, even though it's a small car, is it's very versatile. I love being able to just throw whatever the heck I need to in the back. This is a bunch of construction debris that I was taking home for firewood. Back seats fold down flat. It's great. Water pump for the tractor. I did a video on this. This was an EVSE that was being done through a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter did not go through. They only made about half of their goal, but it was kind of a cool EVSE. These guys were based out of Europe, so like one of their big things were all these different adapters that you could get for it, which I think was probably less appealing in the US than it was in Europe. I shot a video on this. Unfortunately, their app was not quite ready, not available yet. You can, let's see here, there's a little app, and a lot of the cool features were done through the app, so I wasn't able to test and review those. I did like the way that the adapters went on there, though. It was kind of a cool setup. More random motor things. I got a free broken chop saw. I needed a chop saw anyways. This guy was given away for free, so I fixed it. Really, it was just mechanical. It was the actual, like, the case around the motor that was plastic and broken. Motor itself was pretty good. I don't think I had to replace a bearing on there or anything. I ended up using one of these big pipe clamps that actually ended up being the best way to fix it. And here you can see the ports for the brushes, and that's a universal motor. So when you look at that, it's got the commutator on this end. This is brushed, but it runs on AC power, and that's one thing that I thought was kind of cool that I learned about working on all these different electric vehicle projects, is that on a typical DC motor, if you just reverse the polarity, it doesn't change the direction of the motor, because you've reversed both the magnetic fields in the rotor and the stator. And so if you're running on 60 hertz alternating current, basically your electricity is flip-flopping 60 times per second here in North America. But because that motor doesn't care, it's still going to just keep spinning in the same direction. So a universal motor running on AC is nearly identical to just a typical DC series wound motor. So just kind of neat knowing how those work. I hope I'm not rambling on too much here. Again, I'm just kind of trying to show you all the different things I've worked on this year that never made it to YouTube. Some of these things still will, some of them won't. And hey, that's what fast forward is for on YouTube. There's also the little gear where you can like play stuff at like 150%. You know, if I'm talking, you can make me talk faster. Kind of cool. So that shed that this guy wanted solar on, I gave him a quote. I mail ordered all the parts. Again, COVID, you don't really go anywhere, but delivery services were really busy. So I ordered these physically small panels, light, small, easy to handle. These are two 100-watt panels. I just kind of played around in my driveway for exactly how I would want to mount those. Just a couple of short pieces of racking. The exact same stuff that I used on my garage. In this case, I was using these flash foots, and those just slide right up under the shingles on an asphalt shingle roof. Whereas on my garage, that was a metal roof, so I used those S5 pinchy clamps instead. And hey, I had an excuse to use my new chop saw, which was kind of cool too. Let's see here. My daughter there, Sophie, was helping me paint a piece of plywood, because what I was going to do was just mount all the components on there. Nice summer day. There's that little push lawnmower back there. So we painted up the plywood and then cut it out so that all the components could mount on here. I just kind of roughly tested them out. 3/4 inch plywood, nice and sturdy, plenty heavy enough you can set marine batteries right on there, no problem. At this point, I was kind of getting into, I'd finally gotten everything hooked up on the Nissan Leaf motor with the VCU. You know, it looks like a little bit of a rat's nest of connections, but I was just using whatever I happen to have. Not trying to make it look good or anything, just make it functional, test it, learn about it, and then be able to share about it. And this was June 2nd, this summer, June 2nd. So I had all the parts, and I don't think I was even filming this yet. I was just trying to figure it out, literally just tested, snapped some photos with my phone. That was it. And right after June 2nd, you're going to see like all the photos in my photo album change. It's all, it's family photos, because my dad died just out of the blue, you know. Was working construction with him the day before over at that lake house. And then I got a call from my brother next day, like 5:30 in the morning, something like that. Missed him at the hospital. Had to go tell our sister. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. Just right in the middle of everything else going on in our lives. And I come from a pretty big family, but my dad was definitely the guy who was right at the center of the family. Pillar of the community, been around forever, knew everybody, was a volunteer firefighter involved with the Chamber of Commerce, all that kind of stuff. He was a veteran. He was drafted in the Vietnam War. That was something that definitely affected his life and all of our lives. He was a firefighter, just years and years and years as a volunteer firefighter. This was over at this firehouse is basically across the street from where I grew up. The statue here was actually the fire chief of the time, and my dad was the assistant fire chief. So this was the guy that he worked with for a long time over there. There's Sophie with me checking out the statue. These are all guys that I grew up with as the names of all my dad's friends, all that sort of thing. right down the street from my parents' house was a cabinet shop, and that's now run by a guy that I knew from high school. My dad ran this cabinet shop for a number of years, then he sold it to the younger guy, um, who hung up a black stripe on the U.S. flag. There is right down the street from my parents' house, so I drive right past it going down there. Um, and then not too long later, this guy's brother also passed away, just totally unexpectedly. So condolences to Steve there as well. Can you tell this isn't easy? Nah. Not really easy stuff. It's been a tough year. There's some more with that that electric car charging station, that EVSE from that Kickstarter. A lot of times I'd just be snapping photos with my DSLR, trying to get different angles. When I work on these videos and post blogs, most of the time I work really hard at trying to make the photos look good, trying to make it sensible. It's a lot of work that goes into making good quality media, good photos, good videos, going through the process. I was a little disappointed that Kickstarter failed, because I really did think it was kind of a cool product. It was kind of neat how the different adapters would snap on there. Had some kind of cool software. But there's a lot of other products out there now as well. I mean, there's a zillion different EVSEs, but thought this one was kind of cool. So June, getting to be into the summer, Sophie and I went over to my parents' place. My mom was really, you can imagine how everything was going on in the family right now. And my mom would usually do some gardening, and now she was like, oh, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? And I am not a good person at sitting around. So I said, Sophie, let's go get some tomato seedlings. Our local farmer's market was still open. It was outdoors. You'd have to wear a mask. You couldn't touch anything, but the farmer's market was open, so we were able to get some tomato seedlings. And Sophie and I planted tomato seedlings out in the hoop house here. This was something that my dad built. Well, it was a rebuild of a hoop house that my friend Rob Frost had built, and I helped him build the original on a really, really cold January day, however many years back. I mean, it was a cold day that day, but just as a greenhouse, it's a great structure. This is a water collection system my dad and I built, over 800 gallons. There were a lot of projects where, I mean, he was always a really good builder, and I always had all these wacky ideas. So we're like, hey, if you just collected all the rain off the barn roof, then you could water the plants right there. A lot of different ideas like that. So we planted some tomatoes over here, some lettuce in the boxes on the side of the water collection system. There's some right on the side, we were growing lettuce, because that's shaded most of the day, so the lettuce wouldn't overheat. I have a shed right behind my garage. I bought it from a guy down the street. After we moved onto this property, we dragged it down here on a snowmobile trailer. It was a real beast to move. And even back then, it probably needed to be re-roofed. And I let roofing this thing go way too long. And my dad was a roofer for a long time, as well as a remodeler, and I needed to do something. So I re-roofed the shed. And I found some clearance shingles at the big box home improvement store, which was great, because they were, a third the cost of what they normally otherwise would have cost. And tore off all these nasty old shingles. I mean, these things were just peeling off anyway. So I pitchforked the rest of them off, pulled out all the nails. On the one side, the plywood was kind of wet. There was kind of fungus growing underneath there. So I did have to pull off the plywood on the one side and replace it, which meant basically taking off the roof from the inside. Let's see, where's our next photos here? Yeah, here we go. So here's the shed with half the roof off of it. I got some fresh plywood, put the new plywood on there. Let's see if we got, yeah, here you go. So, oops, let's go back. That's right back here. This was all crazy soft. That's just trash. Had to get some new plywood, put that on there. Considerably better once he had the new stuff on there. And part of the reason why I wanted to re-roof this thing is because you never want to put solar on a bad roof. The solar panels are going to outlive the roof, right? So I had 2 spare solar panels from when I installed the solar on my garage originally. And I wanted to put them on here, even like a rafter that had some rot to it, so I sistered another one up to it before putting the new plywood on. And that's the nice new roof right there. Looks a lot better with the new non-rotted material on there. And then after that, it tar paper, staple that down, start the shingles. I had not done any roofing in a long time. I did roofing one summer in high school and hated it. That was actually working, well, I didn't hate it, but it was hard, it was hot, and it was a good job to encourage you to do something else with your life. That was actually working for a friend of my dad's for that summer. He was a good guy. But frankly, all you really have to do is just like read the instructions on the package of the shingles. It'll tell you exactly how to do it. I mean, it's not rocket science or anything. All you need is some nails and a hammer, and you go to it. Water runs downhill. That's really all you need to know. Just layer it up. And after doing all that shingling, then I had a nice new roof on the shed, and that meant that I could now put solar panels up on there. So that was my kind of next alternative energy project. Here's a view of the new shingles kind of out from the road. This needs some repainting too. The trim looked really bad. I did manage to flop a panel up there. In this case, when I had measured it, I thought, this will be perfect. 2 panels will go horizontal across here. This will be just perfect. And I just about killed myself getting this panel up onto the roof. I just really can't lift things like this anymore. Even just sliding it up the ladder. I'm like halfway up, the ladder starts, and I mean, it's a 6-foot ladder, but still, actually, I fell off. But right behind me was my garage. So I fell off, but just backwards like 2 feet against the garage wall. But yeah, it showed me I can't do stuff like that anymore, which kind of sucks, frankly. These are the flash feet. These are by Iron Ridge. It's a pretty cool mounting system. You basically take a flat bar, you gently lift up one of the shingles, you take this, you slide it up under there, you run a lag bolt right through here. Let's see if we can do a little lag bolt goes right through here, and then this part just snaps in place. It's a really cool system. The other thing was there was that guy with that Boathouse who wanted me to do some solar. So I was also doing this with my garage as an experiment, just because like I had never installed these flash feet before. So I thought, well, that's not right. I did some work for a little while as a subcontractor for solar, but I'd never done this before from start to finish as my own project. So I did that with my shed as an experiment just to make sure I had all the numbers figured out. I had the hands-on experience, everything like that. But they're really pretty cool little mounting system. Another thing very interesting is I had the thermal camera out there because in June we had some crazy hot weather. And if you look at this thermal image, the thermometer on the thermal camera attachment I had for my phone was saying 162 degrees. So I had to wear gloves. And this was like kind of a light gray roof. It wasn't even a real black, but if you put your hand on the roof, you would get burnt at 162 degrees. It was just like crazy hot, just kind of ridiculous. The other thing that I wanted to do with this is I wanted to document it to show what it would be like to do an addition to a microinverter system. So this whole thing with the 2 more solar panels on the shed is really just an addition to my existing system. But a lot of times doing this is very hard to do something and film it at the same time. And so I asked my friend Kurt, who is a professional cameraman, if he could give me a hand by doing a little This Old House kind of a thing. So Kurt was nice enough to volunteer to come on over and actually do the recording while I was working on the project. We even had the wireless mic on there, so you could hear me well while I was doing this kind of work. So it was nice because pretty much the first time ever where I had somebody else doing the filming so I could just do the work, in installing the flash foots, installing the railings, showing how to do it, showing how to the various design elements, what things you have to think about, your wire gauge, all that kind of stuff. And so we shot some kind of This Old House style footage of installing this entire setup. There's Sophie again. And then besides the solar panels and that, I also had to run power out to the shed. Did a little digging. I brought buried power out here to my junction box with some new conduit connecting through and then following along right next to the garage here. Involved a bunch of digging. Not my favorite thing. But then that new power went down under the ground right next to the foundation here. And here's just showing how that goes. Put a little insulation around it because that is my heated slab foundation there. Buried all that again with the dirt. And I put in a extra extra circuit breaker in the combiner box here. So these 2 circuits are for all the solar panels on the roof of the garage, and then that last circuit, and they're doubled breakers because they're 240 volts. That last one is for those 2 panels that are on the garage. This is what that looks like without the cover in place. So you can see their pairs, red wire, black wire, purple wire, black wire, which is interesting because when I had the electrician out, I'm like, how do we tell the difference between these 2 circuits? And he's like, oh, we'll just use a different color wire. I'm like, is that to code? And he's like, yeah, code actually says like kind of like what colors and things you can't do, not what you can do. So we color coded, and the one circuit was red and black. The other circuit was purple and black, which was kind of cool because it was actually helpful. Another thing I had started doing was putting out food for the animals. First corn and then peanuts. And this kind of snowballed away from me to the point that I'm now getting possum-themed Christmas presents. But here, this little chipmunk was having fun getting some corn. This was actually a friend of my dad, so I went over to go visit. He was feeding his backyard animals, and he had a ton of chipmunks there, just like fun to watch because he'd like throw out a handful of peanuts and like 20 chipmunks would come running out. It was like a Disney movie or something, just crazy. Here's that water collection system over at my parents' place. This is a sight valve, sight tube, basically just some clear hose coming off so that even though you can't see the water, it's hidden away, so it's kind of integrated into the building. And what that does is it also keeps the water from getting kind of any algae or anything like that to grow in there. What I'd love to do is find like a bright colored little tiny ball that will fit in here, and I'd drop that in because if that was floating on the top of the column of water, it would actually be easier to see. It would just make it work that much better. But that's just so you know how much water is in there. But altogether, this is over 800 gallons of water fits in there. And then it's just got a garden hose on the back here. You can see that whole sight tube is, it's like 3 or 4 feet tall. So getting back over to that lake house. So what that guy wanted me to do is he had this this little shed. So he'd keep in there life preservers and fishing poles and all that kind of stuff. I was just jammed full of all that. One of the things that he wanted was that a lot of times in the summer he would actually lay fishing poles up on top here. This is a pretty low roof, so kind of a convenient place to set things. So he was hoping that he could have all this work and still have room for the fishing poles over there, which was actually a design consideration. So I got those 100-watt solar panels because they're not that wide. So I'd have 200 watts of charging, and that would only take up about half of the roof. The other thing that was nice was this was real low, so I could just use a 6-foot step ladder for getting up there. Made it real simple. And basically, I just laid out a couple of those flash foot fittings. Just used sidewalk chalk to mark where the rafters were. Drilled the holes, put the lag bolts through, snapped those caps on, and then I was able to put the XR100 rails across there. That's Iron Ridge. This is the same kind of stuff that I used on my garage. Great brand name of materials to work with. When I was doing some of that subcontracting work with that solar installer before I got hurt, this was all the same materials they used as well. I like to make sure I don't screw things up. So even, a lot of times just take a pencil, write something down if a measurement is important. Typically 16-inch centers are really common, but for something like a shed, 24 inches is not uncommon. So I wanted to make sure I had that measurement right. We'll just click through a couple of the photos here. So 2 foot apart, a pair of 100-watt solar panels on there. I drilled a hole through for the actual wiring run and used a gasket here that would just stick up, have a little piece of like 3/4 inch conduit go through it. And again, it's above kind of the water line, if you want to think of it, of the roof. So you're not going to get any water in there. And it's also under the solar panel as well. Here's the power cables coming down through there, DC, positive and negative. And of course, this does have to be grounded. On my home solar array, the entire setup used a grounding system that was built right in because of the microinverters. This did not have that, so I had to make sure that the panels and the rails were grounded, and I had to pound a ground, which was a lot of work and not easy because these ground rods are, like 8 feet tall, 5/8 inch copper. Here I just installed a flat stud with a level on it for a place to mount things. Any kind of electrical work, just making it look good when you're all done is important. Just always make sure things are level, justified, everything like that. Using the Chevy Volt as my work vehicle right here, and you can see it's actually looking pretty good. I mean, we got the solar panels over here. The wiring is all hidden away underneath. Probably a gap about that much between the roof and the solar panels. Solar panels do not work as well when they're hot as when they're cold. And earlier you saw on my roof, kind of very similar setup. It was like 160 degrees in the sun. So you always want to make sure that your solar panels are spaced away from an asphalt roof so that you can get the air through there to stay cool. Any kind of, the wiring from the solar panels too, it has to be up and away from the roof because of the heat. I just used a really cheap little solar charge controller for this project. Very simple, 12 volt, nothing to it. This is a 30 amp charge controller. It's the same one that I used in the solar ammo can project. And you know what? If it does fail, very cheap part to replace. There's our Xantrax. That is a true sine wave inverter. I think this was rated for 2,000 watts. I wanted to make sure to use a true sine wave inverter because we were specifically looking at powering electric motors, and electric motors expect a sinusoidal AC signal. Sometimes modified sine wave or step sine wave inverters just do not do as good of a job running motors, especially compressors, refrigerators, things like that. This is the ground rod. It's taller than the shed. Not a real easy thing to work with. I did dig up a post pounder, 2 handles on there. You just keep smacking that thing down until it goes in. The upside of being so close to the lake is you didn't have to go down very far until you're hitting water, and this was definitely conducting into the ground right here. Actually, I was using a lot of cordless tools while I was working on this project, and one thing that was kind of cool was I was able to plug in the inverter, and I was actually charging my cordless tools off the solar system while I was working on it. And you know, that's kind of a cool thing. You know, you can't do that with the gas stuff. You know, it's not like you suddenly could pull gasoline out of the air to power a chainsaw, but with solar you can, you know, put up a solar panel, charge a battery, charge some lithium batteries for running cordless drills, cordless chainsaws, whatever it is. I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to be able to do that. There's just the pulling elbow where the power went through the roof. That is what the solar panels looked like at the end of the day on the finished installation. I thought it looked pretty good. I mean, it was something that I could be proud of. It was kind of the first, being a professional, going and working for somebody else all by myself, 100% my project, design it, install it, everything like that. The inside of the shed was a little weird. It had some crazy wiring. I mean, right here, it had like a 3-way switch to the house. It had a switch for a pump. The wiring that was already there was kind of confusing. I had to take a look and really get in with that wiring. And I actually had to end up coming back another day. I was working out in Madison, had one day of work, woo, at the university, and I saw this university-owned vehicle here. This was the coolest, weirdest little van I'd ever seen. It's a Suzuki, absolutely adorable. It's got a roof rack on it. You can put ladders and things on this, and it is so tiny. It was, where did we go here? Oh, low speed. So this is a low-speed vehicle. It can't be in areas of 35 miles an hour or over. But for a while there, we had a lot of electric vehicles available in the state of Wisconsin that they qualified as low-speed vehicles, basically a fancy electric golf cart that you could run on the road, had headlights and things like that. But I love this. This was a little gas engine, but it was a 4-wheel drive. I stuck my head underneath. I looked at the little drive shafts. Adorable. Just the coolest little truck. And I think that in Europe, there was an electric version of this available. And this is cool too. You look in there, it's right-hand drive. So I think this was probably a Japanese vehicle. Suzuki, right-hand side. I'm assuming this was probably brought over straight from Japan. But just a cool, weird little truck, 4-wheel drive. I think it was like 12-inch tires on it, something like that. But I thought it was cool for just an oddball electric vehicle. Back at that lake house, this was the kind of wiring that I was dealing with. Just wires going all over the place. I had to use my multimeter, check for continuity, figure out what's going where. Yeah, it was goofy. But right through here is also where I had to connect in to wire from the inverter out to the electric outlet by the lake. So what was good about this whole thing was the wiring between this little boathouse here and out at the lake. That wiring was still good. So I was able to essentially wire up the output from the inverter, and then proper household style connections through conduit and everything, wire it out, get it out to the lake. And I have no idea why out of order photo of Sophie is there. Sometimes she like steals my iPad and takes selfies. Weird little girl. Again, some of the wiring, trying to get it cleaned up, make it work right. Nice kind of a hero shot. In my area, we have a lot of lakes, and of course, that's high property value. Where this place was, it was one of the very few remaining kind of small cottage type houses. So many of them have been, rebuilt, heavily remodeled, very expensive. And even in the background, like this yellow house, some of these places just cost a fortune, and I would not want their property tax bills. So here's the electric outlet down by the lake. The output of the inverter was running down to here. So this is an off-grid electric outlet. And then this cord here goes to the guy's boat lift. So out there, he can raise and lower that boat using off-grid solar power. Pretty cool project. I thought it really worked out well. Just used a typical battery box down here. Keep the battery and the electronic stuff separate. This worked out nice as a place to, set things you want to charge up. I put a power strip on there. So the other thing too is if power ever goes out at this guy's house, he still has emergency backup power as part of this whole thing. He can just come out here, plug in the cell phone, charge it up, whatever he needs to do. The orange power cables here from the inverter to the battery, obviously those have to be pretty heavy cables because at only 12 volts, it's low voltage. You draw a lot of current for any amount of power. And so those orange cables were recycled from that Smith electric truck that a friend and I went and drove down and picked up that while back. And that's it. All set and done. It was a cool little solar project. I liked working on that one. Although it was like some of the hottest days of the year, and I should have charged the guy like double. Oh my god, it was like insanely hot in there. It was crazy. It took twice as long to do as I expected. Partly because the wiring was really crazy, and partly just because it was so dang hot. Again, here's my Mitsubishi iMiEV as a really practical work vehicle. This is a 8-foot heavy-duty step ladder, and it fits in the car with the back closed. Not that you can have any passengers, but if it's just me going somewhere. So I was working on installing solar at this guy's place. I used my solar-powered electric car to drive there and back and carry all my tools and everything I needed. It was kind of cool to be able to go fossil fuel free for doing that. Now, back at my own home shed, one thing that I did not love was that I was using direct berry wiring, 240 volt wiring, to go out to the shed for the solar. And it's got to be down 2 feet. That's code for that buried electrical. And digging a trench 2 feet deep sucks. And I mean, it wasn't that far. It was like 6 feet across that I had to go. But, once you're down that deep, anything more than knee deep is a lot of work when it comes to digging trenches. But it was right between the shed and the garage. It's not like I could have rented a trenching machine and fit it in there or anything like that. So there's that direct berry 240 volt power, 2 feet down in the trench, and then coming up through conduit to a junction box. Here, just using my tape measure to figure out how long I have to cut a piece of conduit. I ran the wiring up into there. What I'm doing here is I'm going from that underground direct berry cable, which it's really, it's not easy to work with. It's stiff. This jacket is formed right around the wire, so it's waterproof and everything, but it's stiff. You really can't run it inside conduit. So what I did here is at that junction box, that underground berry cable gets spliced up with this nice flexible cable. and then that can be pulled through the conduit and connect up to the solar panels. That's all AC wiring because I'm using microinverters. So the microinverter right at the solar panel converts from DC, about 30 volts DC, to 240 volts AC. So 30 volts at like 8 amps DC to about 1 amp at 240 volts. Cool system, plug and play, really easy to work with. So here's my conduit coming up. It's got to be up off the shingles, away from them, supported. Junction box connects into the wiring from the end phase inverter here. This is just the connection for the other inverter. You just plug right in. And what's interesting here too on this system is you have the cable and it goes one to the next, to the next, to the next. And at the end, it has to be terminated because it's literally just cut cable. So this part right down here at the end, that's actually just a special connector that goes on the end, and it makes sure that the wiring's waterproof and it can't short against anything. Couple more views of the solar, and I think this is going to, I'm just looking at the timer here, this is going to be my longest YouTube video ever. Go figure. Back again on this. I'm painting the trim because, you know, I did the new shingles, and so the roof looked great, which made the trim look terrible by comparison. So I just got, you know, just some cheap white latex paint. I brushed and scrubbed off the old paint as best I could. And then on the ends, it was really particularly bad. Went through, painted it all up. Right here, you can see how awful that looked. The metal trim was still great. When I re-roofed, I just reused all the metal trim. It was fine. And you can kind of see like up and under the solar panels here. So now I've got the freshly painted trim. Looks a lot better. New shingles, new trim. Here's kind of what you can see from the main road here. And you know what? The siding isn't great, but the wood that it's made out of is actually pretty durable stuff. And the rest of the paint job that you can't really see here is actually in pretty good condition. It's really not bad. This all looked so much better than what I had before. So there's Kurt filming me do the install. So I've got the footage for me doing all of this is probably going to be, I think, 3 10-minute videos for like step by step by step. Here's how you do a shed solar installation. And in this case, it's specifically AC with microinverters. You can actually see how tan my arms are right there. And of course, I can only touch the solar panels with gloves because I'd get burnt otherwise. But I've still got all this footage to edit together to make a video out of. And if people want to see a DC off-grid system, I've got that other guy's shed. So I'm going to be able to make a couple of videos talking about shed solar, which I think is a great place to start from. I mean, if you want to do solar, don't do an entire house, you know. Start simple. Do something easy. And then because this does connect in with my existing solar system, I could actually just track how much power I would have on here. And before, the most I could ever do was 5,400 watts was the peak theoretical. And so I plugged all this in, turned the breaker on, have to wait 5 minutes as a safety feature. I was making more than that. It was so cool just to go, hey, more solar power. And there's only 2 types of people in this world. People who don't have solar and people who want more solar. That's it. But I was pretty happy with how this turned out. You can't really see it well, but there's little black plastic caps in the end here. I thought it turned out pretty nice. Please feel free to give me compliments because I did this all myself from scratch. Roofing, painting, solar design, solar installation, whole 9 yards. And looking at this photo right here, feels like it was all worth it. You know, it looks good. It's clean. It's something I can be proud of. It's something I can show off to other people. And I've had people stop by my house not long after this go, hey, do you like solar? Can you tell me more about it? I'm like, yeah, here, look at this. Come back here. Look how I did this. Kind of cool to be able to do that. And that actually led into another solar project. I got referred to a guy by a solar company, and they said, here, this guy, he wants to do something kind of wacky. It's not what we do, but maybe you'd be interested. So I went and talked with him. I did a little solar survey kind of a setup, and this guy's got a yurt. And you can't put solar panels on the roof of a yurt because it's a tent. You know, it's a conical tent. You're not going to put solar panels on the roof, but it would be a good setup for doing a ground mount. And he was even thinking about doing like a trailer with solar panels on the roof of the trailer. So far, nothing's happened with this guy. He's been kind of thinking, oh, I want to do this. No, I want to do that. So nothing's happened yet. But it was really cool getting to see his yurt. I mean, it's very spacious inside. He built the whole thing himself. Did a really nice execution of it. Plywood floor. He's got this nice wood stove in there. It's really pretty cool setup. It's just he wants to go off grid with it, have electrical power there. He already had just a pair of random car batteries and a small power inverter, which was actually working okay. But he wanted to be able to add solar charging because at this point he had to physically carry those batteries from here, put them in his car, take them home, charge them up at home, everything like that. And he wanted to do kind of this off-grid, kind of a campsite sort of a setup. Kind of a campground sort of a property. And it'd be great with solar. It would definitely be a good setup. We'll skip through some things, other not overly interesting projects. Oh, here we go. Back to some more solar. I've got a friend who he's a guy that I met at the MREA Energy Fair. Kind of a cool event right in the middle of Wisconsin in the summer. Except this year it got canceled. And this guy had some old solar equipment that was donated to him by a friend of his. And this is actually Xantrax. This is a good brand name. And he was talking about, basically it's two sets of solar equipment. And his idea was, he doesn't really know a lot about installing solar or that sort of thing. And his idea was he wanted to do a solar trailer. And he wanted me to install the equipment, work with him, install it, and then he would give me half the equipment. This is pretty nice. This is like a 5,000 watt 48 volt inverter. Now it's old school, so it's got a transformer. It weighs a ton. It's big. But you could put this into a trailer with a 48 volt battery pack and run your entire house off of it, which would be a very cool thing to be able to do. Along with it was some combiner boxes, Outback battery chargers. These are very nice pieces of solar equipment. Outback, they make some really good things. I think that's the 60 amp Outback charger. Good equipment. When I got to go see this equipment, I was kind of excited about it. Yeah, here we go. 60 amp MPPT. That's a great solar charge controller. 60 amp. Recommended PV current 48 amp, max voltage 80 volts DC. That's good equipment. You can do a lot of cool things with that right there. And this was actually stored over at a friend of his who had a barn. And this is kind of cool too. The guy who originally installed that equipment, I know him. I've met him. He's been a long time solar guy. Been in the business forever. Did some nice work over at the MREA with. They did a big over the top solar array for electric vehicles, and I got to help install the EVSEs there, which was kind of cool. Unfortunately, when they did the over-the-top solar array, was after I was hurt, so I wasn't able to work on actually installing that. But this was just a really cool, weird little homestead in the middle of nowhere. There's this old wind generator there. Cool old barn. This is where the equipment was stashed, and a really nice tracker array outside. Just a very cool setup, and it's just a neat place. It was cool to visit. This is what you see from the road. Very private, hidden back there. So another thing that I did was I knew a few folks who were interested in solar, and I found some solar panels for sale cheap. And this was through one of the online battery places, and they had some brand new solar panels, but they were sold like by the case. And I thought, I'll take all you have. I wanted 3 cases. By the time I got to them, they only had 2 left, so I ordered them. They came like this. JA Solar, nothing real special for a brand name or anything. 250 watts, pretty similar to what I've got in my garage, but they're new. And so I ordered these because I knew enough people that we did like a mini group buy. So I bought these, I got them delivered to my house. It was one of those things too where you kind of pay the same amount for shipping, whether it's 1 box or 10 boxes, because the truck's got to come out to your place anyways. This is not UPS, it's all freight. Had these very cool looking cases. Actually, Brian, if you're watching, these are the cases that I shipped you those motorcycle parts in. There's Sophie checking out the new solar panels. And I busted these all up, 6 solar panels to this guy, 5 solar panels to that guy, whatever it was. And I was taking apart the case. And of course, the little girl had to hop in there because, it's a box, and that's what little girls do. They hop in a box. And we ended up actually building a tiny house for her. So that was our little project with the leftover boxes. She's like, well, why don't we put a door on it? I'm like, okay, I got a jigsaw. Let's put a door on it. And it kind of snowballed from there with a door handle and then a window on the end. We put a porthole in there because I had a porthole for years and years that I always wanted to use on like a camper or something like that. So she was very excited. I don't know. I guess that's her being a ham face right there. Has to be silly in front of the camera. But she was pretty excited about having a porthole. And then we did a few other things too. There's a good face. We built a little flip down desk for her. I had some cushions around from an old sofa we had that broke, and I saved the cushions. They fit perfectly in there. I had some plastic mirror that I got from way back when. Still had a few pieces around. We put a mirror in there, made it look twice as big inside. Oh, here we go. View through the porthole. So just perfect as like just a cool, weird little clubhouse for a little girl. And she got to have fun working on it. Again, that's the sort of thing. Kids in general are capable of more than we usually think. And if you actually let them lead the way, it's pretty cool what they can do. Let's see here. I wanted to put a metal roof on her box. And over here, this is something my dad built. It was a pigeon coop. It was all just built out of like whatever, just scrap materials that he had around, but it's got a metal roof on it. So I went over to take a look at that. He had a box of these screws around. These screws are, they go right through the metal, but they got a little rubber washer on there too. So they're exposed metal roofing fasteners. So I grabbed that box of screws, and the little girl and I went to the home improvement store, and I happened to have about a $20 store credit with the place. So we ended up buying 1 sheet of this nice new roofing metal, gray. Looks really nice. Bought that with our store credit, brought it home, and used that as the roofing for her little tiny house here. This is just with it flopped on, but of course we had to actually We had to do some venting, strengthen the corners, permanently attach the top on there, clamp, glue. I had a little bit of roofing felt left over from the shed, so we stapled the roofing felt on there, and then put on the metal roofing. Yep, that's what my driveway looks like. Electric cars, solar panels, and tiny houses. And so that's kind of what those fasteners look like, going through the metal. The one thing you just want to make sure to not overdrive them, because then your rubber gasket gets kind of squeezed out too much. They were white fasteners and it was a gray roof, so it wasn't perfect. But hey, those fasteners are a little expensive. We already had them. This was kind of fun, getting some of these solar panels out to a couple other folks. One guy shows up in a beat up SUV, we load him in there. Another guy shows up in a Tesla, we load him in there. And so let's see, this was a Model S, and the solar panels fit absolutely perfectly in there. We had some packing blankets and things so the car wouldn't get scratched up, but that's a nice spacious car. And since the S is a hatchback, you can fit a lot in there. It was kind of fun to have a car like that show up to pick up some solar panels. So Tesla Model S, packed with solar. My daughter took a photo of my elbow because she thought it looked like a frowny face, and she wanted to stick some googly eyes on there. I found one box of flooring for dirt cheap at the thrift store, and it was like the exact amount. So we did this nice laminate flooring on the inside of her tiny house. Put some solar in there. Took a little solar panel, stuck it on the roof. Another thing is I bought an eco hitch for the Volt. This is by Torque Lift Central. They make some really nice products, and I was able to install a hitch on the Prius. Here's Sophie with basically the finished tiny house. I had a pair of wheelbarrow wheels, so we put those on there and then set it up with a tongue too. So it's a little trailer. It can get moved around with the lawn tractor. Turned out pretty nice. She was pretty happy with it. We even gave her an address. Had a couple of brass numbers around, so she's 790 right in our backyard. That's what that looks like right there. There's a little bit of solar we put in her house as well. Then over on the Chevy Volt, I installed the hitch myself, and this one was designed where it's behind the license plate. So I took a hole saw, cut a couple of holes through there. The green tape shows where the license plate goes. Unfortunately, this car also has the backup camera and is kind of right in the way because the license plate has to go somewhere. It has to flip up if you're going to use the hitch. So I took the entire back bumper off. The Volt has an aluminum back bumper, go figure. Just put down a packing blanket so it wouldn't get all scratched. Up on a ramp here just to get the whole car up higher. Volt is a low car, so removing any of these fasteners below is a pain in the butt unless the vehicle is raised up at least a little bit. Here is the Eco Hitch installed. It goes onto the 3 bolts on either side where that aluminum bumper was. So basically you pull off the plastic bumper cover, you pull off the aluminum bumper, you put this in, you put the aluminum bumper back over it, put the bolts back on. Very solid. So that's what that looks like with the aluminum bumper back in place. And then depending on what height you need, you might need a raise or a drop to put the ball in the right position for your trailer. Torque lift. The other thing that's kind of an issue with this setup though is the chains for the trailer. So I put basically a steel cable loop in there before putting this all back together. So I'd have a nice convenient spot to hook the chains. Here's another guy who got some of the solar panels. So he showed up in a pickup truck. We stacked them in there and he took them off. I used some Velcro for the license plate. And actually, when I was sharing about this, some people are like, oh, dude, your license plate's going to get stolen. It's like, how does anybody know it's held on by Velcro? Come on. And what I ended up doing in the end is actually using some piano hinge to hold my license plate in plate, and then the Velcro just to hold it down. Right here, it was just Velcro only, so I just totally take the license plate out of the way, and here's the hitch. Here's the hitch upside down. And Sophie's tiny house also had a telephone. Okay, here's another project that I really haven't talked about too much yet. A couple of people spotted this in one of my videos. This is a Mitsubishi iMiEV that was crashed that I bought. It's literally the only other guy that I know anywhere in my area who has a Mitsubishi iMiEV. Basically, at an intersection, boom, somebody ran through, hit this direction, nailed the corner of the steel bumper, bent all the plastic in, but it was hit just hard enough to fire off the airbag. So all of a sudden, it turns into a big hairy deal, right? The car drove fine. I went over to the auto body shop that the guy took it to, and I actually saw the estimate for fixing this. It was like $9,000. I'm like, the car's not worth $9,000, and so it was totaled out. So here you can see this photo is just right through the window. The airbag and the steering wheel deployed. A couple scratches on the car, more dirt than anything. But it's only got 42,000 miles on it, which is, not a lot. And it's like, what, an 8-year-old car with 40,000 miles on it? Come on. The battery, I checked it. The battery is actually in good condition, better condition than on my car. Another interesting thing, it has snow tires on it, and they're like brand new. The tread is ridiculously deep. Brand new Yokohama snow tires. And this is a rear-wheel drive car. And in Wisconsin, we have winter, we have snow. I could use some snow tires. And so between the value of the snow tires on steel rims and the battery, I'm like, well, what do you think the car is worth? Because I figure it's got to be at least $800, maybe $1,000, because tires on this car aren't cheap, and I need the rims and everything. And the battery pack is 16 kilowatt hour, so that's probably worth $1,600 if you're looking at like $100 per kilowatt hour. And this is all the information on what it takes to fix the car. Look at this: airbag, $1,000. Spring for the steering wheel, $70, and that's just parts. Seatbelt components, $600, $700. Crazy stuff. Here's the regular charger. It does not have the fast charger. This is the basic version of the car. It doesn't have fog lights, doesn't have the fancy radio, just the plain 2012 Mitsubishi iMiEV. But from here, it looks pretty good. It's a good car. So I bought it from the guy, and I drove it home, and I paid less for it on what the insurance buyout was than what the battery's worth. Drove fine. I bought it from the guy, not from the insurance company, and because of that, it's got a clean title on it. Here you can see, for example, that it's the base version. On my car, there's a fog light and a daytime running light here, but on this car, no, it's junk. It's plastic. And I was able to look under the hood to make sure that there wasn't anything messed up with the steering or anything else. It was the bumper. Bumper itself was smashed in, but nothing else wrong at all under the hood. Selling some more solar. Actually working outside one day, melting under the hot summer sun. I've got this tailbrella, which is, it's kind of cool. It's a patio umbrella, but it mounts into the 2-inch receiver on your car. And I thought, cool, I got a 2-inch receiver on the Volt now, so I could work outside and stay in the shade. So it's kind of designed for camping and tailgating and things like that. It's It's kind of a cool thing to have. I needed a wiring harness as well if I tow a trailer rather than just have like a bike rack mount in there or something. So I got the Curt powered taillight converter. This is kind of a cool vehicle. This is a hybrid SUV. Somebody else who wanted to buy some of the solar panels. Volvo. I'd never even heard of this. It's a Volvo. It's like a Chevy Volt, but as a Volvo SUV. The guy was nice enough to let me go drive it. It was really nice. It was a very cool vehicle. All-wheel drive, very cool setup. It was just really fun to get to do that. If I had more time and everything, would have been cool to shoot a video just on that. Another one that was kind of cool is we, now past tense, had a DC fast charger in my city. And I was over by it one time. I saw a Harley Davidson plugged in over there at the electric name is LiveWire, the production version of the LiveWire, because originally when the kind of prototype LiveWire premiered, I went to the event where they released it in Milwaukee at the Harley Davidson Museum, and I went there on an electric Harley. It was one that a friend of mine had converted after I converted my Kawasaki to electric. But seeing the production version of the LiveWire in the wild was pretty cool, especially that it's got the DC fast charging on it. So here we've got this fast charger has CHRGET and the CCS on it. So you see the CCS plugged right into the Harley. And this was actually owned by a guy who worked for Harley. So he was an engineer. I got to chat for him a bit while he was charging up. It was very interesting. Really cool to learn more kind of the behind the scenes about this electric motorcycle. Here's some more photos of the, I got solar panels in my car again, of that Mitsubishi. I pulled it out. I tried to kind of start working on it, see what needed to be done. Overall, it really looked like it was in pretty darn good condition. It had the original 120 volt EVSE with it, low mileage. Really just a good little vehicle, and just a shame that that bumper got pushed in and it set off the airbag. But still a cool little car. So at this point, I'm still trying to decide whether I should try to fix it up and sell it, which would be cool because it's a perfectly functioning car. To scrap it for parts would kind of be a shame, but at the same time, I could pretty much take that 16 kilowatt hour battery pack off the car, bolt it to the wall of my garage, and use it as a power wall. You know, use the solar panels to charge that battery pack, run my entire house off that battery pack, which would be a very cool trick to be able to do. One of the other things with this car is the seat belts are locked up. That's the thing with modern airbag systems, is that the seat belts, typically there's a little device and it fires, so the seat belts jam up and holds you in your seat at the same time that airbag goes off. Those are not expensive parts if you buy them used or you get them repaired. Okay, not electric car related, but hilarious. There's a company online that sells tarps that are formerly the vinyl materials from billboards, and you can get some good prices on them, and because they're old billboard material. So right here, what you see is actually, this is my firewood pile right off my back porch. And I went, you know what? Buying one of these old graphics from a billboard from this company online, it's a thicker material. It would be a better tarp and cheaper than what I could buy at the store to put a tarp on this anyways. So I ordered a pair of tarps from them, and I get the tarps and I open them up, and you don't get a say on what's on the other side of these tarps. And actually you sign a thing saying, hey, I'm not going to use this for advertising. I'm going to put the backside out where people see it. So here I've got all this firewood. I don't want it to get wet. I want it covered with a tarp. So I get this tarp, I open it up and it's for an adult store. So literally, this is like a billboard for, you know, one of those places on the state line for consenting adults to go to. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't, I live in a neighborhood. I can't have, you know, flirty girl saying, ooh, go to fall fantasy at the Castle Mega Store. So I'm like, kind of here's the other one, essentials for lovers. So and this tarp's like 40 feet long. It's heavy duty. It's perfect for my firewood pile, keep the rain off my firewood and heat my house with wood in the winter. But yeah, hot stuff. So I was terribly embarrassed, and I make sure that these are facing down. So you know, it's a big sign too. So I'm trying to promote solar and be a good citizen and everything. And yeah, this is my firewood cover right here. Sophie did end up getting a small solar panel for her tiny house. This is like, I think this was a 15-watt panel, but it's got a nice aluminum frame. And we just used some of those kind of waterproof fasteners just to screw it straight down. Seemed to work pretty well. And we did that so the cord would go through at a part that was overhanging the actual house itself, so it would still be watertight, no issues that way. I did scrap out my old pickup truck this summer. This thing, I had some issues with it. It was sitting around for a long while. I always had dreams of converting this to a hybrid. And then I got hit by a lumber truck. Had a lot of other things going on in my life. And we ended up getting that used Chevy Volt, which has been a very good car for us. So it was just time for the truck to go. So I ended up donating it, just got it out of here. But, you know, way back when I kind of had this super truck concept, which was really more of a concept than anything else. I originally entered the idea in an online contest, and there were some other things. I still loved the idea of doing that with this truck, and actually I've got an electric motor that would be perfect for it, but just based on how battery technology has advanced and everything else, I don't think a DC powered hybrid truck is as good of a project as some other things we can now do. The other thing was that it was always just like a step beyond my skill level on the mechanical side. And this summer I haven't been able to hang out with my machinist buddies and all that sort of thing. So, you know, the thing too, though, is when you get rid of stuff, it kind of opens up other things in your life. So it was time to say goodbye to the truck. And as cool as it was, it's got the little flip down jump seats and everything. Time to just get that out of here and be gone. Remember how Sophie and I planted those tomatoes? Beginning of August, they were more than 6 feet tall. You know, we had all that hot weather and greenhouse, and pretty cool to be able to grow something like that. A lot taller than a little girl, I can say that much. Of course, getting that truck out of there, it wasn't running. And Sophie loves the lawn tractors, so we were able to use the electric lawn tractor to move the disabled truck around. I did shoot a YouTube video about this. Well, 2 of them actually, with the brass shotgun shells. I think we'll get this back to this in a minute when I've got some better photos of that. Sophie did have to sit in the back of the pickup truck one last time in those cute little fold down jump seats in the extended cab S10. Let's see here. I think this was a Model Y. This was kind of the first Model Y that I've seen in the wild, and it's pretty cool. It's got the same style handles on it as the Model 3. To me, all the Teslas kind of look the same because they're that same kind of body shape. The X is pretty obvious with the gullwing doors on the back and it being so much taller. But the Model Y really just looks like a tall Model 3. And what was kind of cool was I was out in my electric car, so I parked right behind it. And the funny thing is, I don't think the Model Y is any taller than a Mitsubishi iMiEV. It's longer, it's four-wheel drive, but they're both electric and have pretty much essentially the exact same view of the road. But it was just kind of cool to get to see a Y in the wild and also compare it to my electric car right away, which I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, now that I had a hitch on the Volt, here's that piano hinge for the license plate. I could do some towing with it. And any car that has a backup camera is great for towing because you can back right up and hitch it up the first time. Just fantastic that way. So here we were working on doing a little work with my trailer, which the siding on it has seen better days because I did do a wood siding on it. But everything else about that trailer has actually been really good. And I more than anything was just doing some test towing, try things out. We took it out to a state park campground. And the nice thing too is they've got all these RV spots available at this campground. So if you've got an electric vehicle, you can just plug in and charge while you're there. So here's my my porn store tarp, and I'm just trying to cover my firewood. I got this stretched out and back on the back of our property, 23 feet long. That's what it is. Just cover up the firewood, and I just use some conduit because this tarp here actually did have a what do you call it? A sleeve, a looped hem where you can put a pipe or something like that through there. So I was able to tie it to the fence on the top side, and then down at the bottom, just put a piece of conduit through to hold it down, and it worked pretty well. And nobody sees that it's for an adult store anymore. Sometimes when I come home, this is what I see. I don't know where she gets it from, but she's a ham. We did manage to get a ball stuck on the roof under the solar panels once. That was interesting. How do you get a ball stuck in there? But little girl seems to have a knack for that sort of thing. I did check out a friend's solar array, see if he was interested in maybe some used solar panels to add to his place. It looks like the way his setup is, though, it's not quite going to work out, unfortunately. And let's see, we'll skip ahead a little bit here. Back on a more personal note, my dad was always a hunter and an outdoorsman and a dog trainer. He always had a dog, usually a Brittany Spaniel. So this was his last dog. A couple years back, we did a lot of these canoe trips. We did a number of these canoe trips, my dad, my brothers, and I, which is really cool. Just go out in the middle of nowhere for like a week with tents and a cooler of food. And this little dog, as a puppy, went with us because my dad had just gotten him as a puppy, like, I don't know, 2 weeks before we went canoeing or something. He was like, he's too young to just leave for a week, so he went with us. And a puppy in a canoe, that was interesting. I remember my dad literally throwing him out of the canoe at one point, which was sort of hilarious. I mean, we were right next to the shore, so it was a gentle throw, but it was still... My dad literally threw the dog out of the canoe. And this day here, it was a little sad because we were saying goodbye to the dog because my mom couldn't take care of them. These dogs, they have to run all over the place, get exercised all the time. So this dog got to be adopted by one of my cousins who has a significant other who he's a hunter and an outdoorsy kind of a guy. So the dog is gone, but up north somewhere, not as a euphemism at a farm, but actually having fun, running around and everything. I did some experimenting with shotgun shells. My dad was cremated, which was his wishes. And with the whole COVID thing too, it was really weird. Like funerals had changed so much, like when and where people were doing. Some people like weren't even having funerals. Some people were doing just like really minimal things right at the gravesite. And one thing that was ironic or appropriate, that lake house, that lake cottage that my dad and I were working at, that was a friend of the family, my dad, who had known forever. It was a woman who was literally the local funeral director. So she was the one who did his funeral, and we had people there, but it was all in masks and people cycling through, and a lot of it outdoors and everything. But with my dad being cremated, there's no gravesite. Uh, I wanted to do something special, and he was a longtime hunter. A lot of the time, birds, pheasants, that sort of thing. So I got brass shotgun shells, and I taught myself about shot loads. You know, loading up shotgun shells. I just watched every YouTube video that I could about home loading shotgun shells, and it looked like if you were just using artificial black powder, it's actually very straightforward. With you don't need like a fancy loading press and things like that. I mean, a dowel and some really super basic tools. And my dad had done a fair amount of black powder shooting and reloading. So I just used some of the supplies that he had. Here's a powder measure, and I loaded up shotgun shells, and I went out to the range. There's a public range not too terribly far away, and tested them. Got to go out, did a few test patterns and things. Here's some of the pins from the Army, from the when my dad was in the Vietnam War. And what are those pins on there? Actually, there was a apparently this pin here, like you kind of earn it like through boot camp, out practicing with firearms and everything, which as a lifelong hunter he was already very good at. So apparently he actually earned like the highest marksmanship award when at basic training. But I got these brass shotgun shells, and I loaded them. I loaded them up with my dad's ashes. Which was quite the project to work on. It was extremely emotional. I mean, I think you can tell that right now. But it was pretty cool to be able to do too. The brass shotgun shells were they're a little tiny bit different size than the plastic ones. So the wads, the kind of the spacers that you would use, which could be made out of plastic or cardboard or whatever, are a slightly different diameter than what you would use with the plastic shell. So I wanted to use these brass shells. And so I ended up cutting these discs again on that vinyl cutter, which I was finding suddenly to be a really cool tool. You can do a lot of things with it, kind of in the same way as a CNC router or a 3D printer, that sort of a thing. Neat tool when you know how to use it. So I was actually using my modern CNC vinyl cutter to cut out cardboard. This was actually cereal box. It was just recycled, reused. I think my dad would get a kick out of that. Then I used those in loading up the cremation ash. Pack that down over the black powder. Put the initials in there so I know which ones these are. And then just a little glue on the top to hold everything in place. Another thing that was kind of cool, my dad had just a bunch of these weird old little boxes in with his reloading stuff, little old Prince Albert in a can, tin, stuff like that. And this was a little box. It was originally for a shaving kit. Much of my life, my dad shaved with an old-fashioned safety razor, and this was a box that something like that came in, and I found that it exactly fit these brass shotgun shells. So they made kind of a cool sort of a presentation case for the shells, just completely by chance happened to fit in there. And I did 20 gauge shells because that's usually what my dad used, typically for pheasant hunting, that type of a thing. And the other reason why is we had a family shotgun that was nearly 100 years old, and that was a 20 gauge. And the only time I ever went hunting with my dad, it was pheasant hunting. I got the pheasant, one shot. That's the first and last time I ever hunted. I'm almost positive it was with this shotgun. Just using a dowel. 5/8 dowel actually lines up pretty close with 20 gauge. I also experimented a little bit. There was some beeswax in there. Tried using that for sealing a couple of the shells too. But here's all the finished shells with the ashes in them. Barbershop box. That was something. That was other random electric vehicle stuff. Here's a solar-powered battery-based charger out near Madison, Wisconsin. I was driving past that one day, so I used the opportunity to charge up the car there. And a while back, I did shoot a bunch of footage of this, and that's another thing that I've got a bunch of footage of that I haven't made a video from, and I still intend to. But I think from what I've been sharing with you here, you can see why I am kind of behind on some videos. That guy that I got a bunch of Electrak stuff from, I come back home one day from wherever I was, and there's another Electrak component on my front porch, and it is the Electrak Arc-Welder. So there were so many cool accessories available for these 36 volt electric lawn tractors, and maybe one of the coolest was an arc welder. It literally runs right off the electric tractor. I have not had a chance to arc weld with this yet, but that is something I definitely want to try, and I want to make a video about this because how many tractors can you arc weld from? I just think that's pretty darn cool. We randomly found a really cool little tiny newt. I never see these in our area, but a really cool little guy. Thought that was pretty neat, seeing a little amphibian around like that. By the way, if you polish brass shotgun shells first, they look amazing. Those two are polished. It was a friend of my dad's, has a lot of reloading equipment. I went and talked with him and said, hey, do you run these through your polisher? And he's like, sure, no problem. So this is what they looked like straight from in a box mail order. This is what they looked like being polished. Man, those things look good. I mean, check that out. Very nice. Leading up to the funeral was pretty hard. Kind of a do-it-yourself funeral. We had some big prints made up. My brother-in-law works in some graphics, so I did the scanning and color correction and stuff, and he did up the big prints to have at the funeral. Yeah, we had some firefighters there, and we had displays, and he had some old antique style fire extinguishers up in the attic of the garage for a long while. I don't remember where he got them from, but I said, hey, these are really cool. Can we do something with them? I want to do something with them. And he's like, I got an idea in mind. We'll do something later. And I don't know, that was 5 years ago or something like that, maybe. So after he passed away, that was another thing I did. I dug them out and polished them up, and we used those for floral displays. just as a kind of a cool historical thing, my dad went on a buffalo hunt. I don't remember how many years ago, but the rifle that he used, this is a, God, was it 1884 model rifle? It's a very cool rifle that shoots a very big bullet. I actually have one of the rounds here. That shoots this. That is a big enough round to drop a buffalo in one shot. So in that photo is the buffalo and him with the rifle, and you see also this is the buffalo skin, and that's the rifle. Just thought that was kind of a cool thing, just have on display there. And so that's what we did for the public funeral, and then the next day we did a ceremony for spraying the ashes. This was at private property, good friend of his, rural place he went hunting a lot, and it was terribly, terribly sad. Just incredibly hard on everybody. But at the same time, it was cool. It was at kind of the public funeral. It was, you really didn't get any time to talk to anybody. Everybody's wearing masks and social distancing and everything else. Whereas this was, it was outdoors, and it was just the family and stories, that kind of thing. And we had a bunch of his ash in little jars, and everybody got to go spread some of his ashes on this property. And then at the very end, I had the shotgun shells that I loaded up, and so we got to fire off some of his ashes as well. So there's my daughter with me, and it was hard on everybody, but she actually came over and asked to fire off a round, which I wasn't even, I was kind of thinking, like, all my uncles were hunters, and I thought for my brothers, there's not even a coffin, so you're not even a pallbearer, so I wanted to do something special. But having my daughter come over and fire off a round, it was kind of unexpected, but I thought that was kind of cool that she did that. In other crazy news, my brother, who lives in Ecuador, got engaged, so that was kind of exciting. Not exciting why we had him up here for the funeral, but him getting engaged was kind of cool. Another thing, something a little different, was I ended up buying a gun, which I am not a gun guy. But I remember when I was a kid going and shooting a rifle a couple times with my dad, and 22 shooting at cans and stuff like that. And I found over at Walmart, they actually had a number of rifles on clearance. And one of them was a Henry, which is a rifle made in America. And actually, one of their two plants is right in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. I'm like, how cool is this? It's made in the USA. It's made, in my home state. Now, this one is actually made in New Jersey, but some of their other line is made right here in Wisconsin. And I ended up buying a Golden Boy, which is it's basically a cowboy rifle. It's this very kind of old-fashioned looking thing, but I kind of wanted to do something in memory of my dad, and he liked a lot of this old-fashioned stuff, and grew up in the 50s when all the cowboy movies were going on, everything like that. And the other thing is, this rifle has a really nice look to it. It's got the wood stock and the all the brass on there, and I thought, boy, I could do something really cool with engraving. I could do something really neat that way. And I wasn't sure exactly what yet that I wanted to do, but I was taking a look at a lot of videos on doing custom engraving and that sort of thing. A friend of mine has a laser engraver, so actually I went over there and I took some wood that was very close to the stock of the gun, and I did some experiments with. I stained it and cleaned it off and dried it and everything, and then took it over to a laser cutter. It actually matches the gun stock pretty close. I got the wood from the guy that I know who runs the cabinet shop. And so we popped this into the, I had some ideas for maybe, some canoeing thing or buffalo, something kind of old fashioned. This pin here was actually, that was my dad's from in the Army. And that Army logo has not changed since at least the Civil War. So I thought that was kind of cool that was my dad's, but it's the same thing that could have been right on a firearm like this during the Civil War. Same thing. Thought that was kind of cool. So I took this over to my friends. We took a look at power levels and things like that, what it would take to laser. And this is not rotated properly, but this is a little bit of what it looks like, the laser in action. This is just above through kind of a dirty plexiglass screen, but you can see it cutting away. And here I was just doing this buffalo as a test piece. But it actually looks pretty good. And so my idea was to do some sort of custom engraving in memory on this rifle stock. And I was just kind of experimenting to see what would work. And I think this actually looked really good. Here's some better photos of what that looks like. I also ran a little bit of stain over it again to see if the look of the stain changed any. This was actually a cut mode on the laser, so it's pretty deep and it gives you really good contrast, but I don't think the texture is right. It kind of burned the wood in some places. Here's just a different color temperature more than anything, but looked pretty cool. The difference is that a gun stock has a little bit of a curve to it, and typically these laser cutters you really need to run on a flat surface because there actually is a focus to them. Remember back in March when my furnace broke? This photo here is from October, and it's starting to get cold out in Wisconsin in October. So here's my old furnace. I fiddled around with it. This I could get it to run for a little while, but then the safety would, kick back on, turn it off. Now I did have a friend who's kind of a do-it-yourselfer homesteader kind of a guy who works in HVAC, and his wife works at essentially a HVAC warehouse. So through them, I was able to get a replacement furnace, essentially at employee price. And furnaces are expensive, but a big part of it is the installation. So I thought, well, how hard can it be to install a furnace? And I watched all the YouTube videos I could, and then I went at it, just pulling out the AC portion here, disconnecting the pipes. It's just PVC tube bringing air in, taking exhaust out on a modern furnace, and got it out. Got the new one. It was about $950 for the new furnace. A little tiny bit more efficient than the old furnace. The other thing that was interesting is right outside where these pipes go through the wall. You can see it's next to a window. There's a shutter outside, and there's holes drilled for the pipes to go through the shutter. I needed to change how these pipes were going to be a little bit. And so when I took the shutter off, there was a bat underneath, and it was pretty cold. So the bat was, not really very active, and it's day, but I got some pretty cool close-up photos of the bat, and it was just really cool looking. Big ears, leathery, and I did pet him. Very soft. Bats are crazy soft. Go figure. So here I got the old furnace out, put the new furnace in, hanging out with the bat. Put him in a... Oh, here we go. Yes, I've got video for you. So that's what a bat looks like when it's like, hey, it's day and I'm cold, and you just pulled off the thing I was hiding behind. But just cool getting to see an animal like this up close. And that's what the holes through the wall look like, where the pipe was going through in and out for the furnace. Pretty straightforward. Installing the gas pipe on there, a little bit of wiring. I've done basic wiring, not that complicated. The sheet metal was probably the hardest thing. My buddy Josh gave me a hand with that. He actually custom bent the sheet metal for me. He did that over at his shop and came back with it, and then we installed it. Here's the gas pipe and the shutoff and the bat. And the new pipes coming in for the intake and exhaust. I did, where they went in the furnace was a little bit different than the old one, so I had to do kind of a weird little crisscross kind of a setup to make it all fit. But by the time it was all done, it was actually a nicer, cleaner installation. This is what the pipes looked like right there. But for pipes and connectors and stuff like that, probably less than $100 for all the other materials that I needed in total. So a brand new furnace with a 20-year warranty on it, fully installed, was about $1,050 as a do-it-yourself project. Back on the shed in the backyard with the solar panels. This photo was taken October 7th, and you can see the strong shadow on a sunny day that the sun's starting to get lower and lower in the sky. And as it does, this shadow is going to get higher and higher across the shed. And now here in December, if I went out there in the middle of the day, I would not be surprised if the shadow is now actually hitting those solar panels there. Kind of a weird thought, but the shed, when the sun is so low in the winter, can actually be shaded by the garage. But here's my new intake and exhaust for the furnace. Another thing that I was interested in was I was watching through some YouTube videos on brass engraving, and I actually had a hunk of brass. It was it's a test sample from a foundry that I was doing some work at. I actually have it right up here. It's just kind of a cool hunk of metal. So I've just used it as a paperweight, but I was watching videos on engraving metal, and it's actually really easy to do with a battery charger and some vinegar and salt water, and not tough at all. So here I've got a couple of designs that I engraved in there, and I tried doing that a couple different ways. This one here I actually did with pickle juice, believe it or not. The one thing is, this is a weird shape to try to clamp jumper cables or something like that onto. So I drilled and tapped a 1/4-20 hole in the bottom so I could just run a bolt in there, put a clamp on it. And then if you take a look at some of these photos, here we go to there. This was, I don't remember if this was right after I electro-engraved it or after I tried putting a little bit of paint or something in there. But I kind of played around with, I experimented to see how I could get it to show up lighter or darker. This was actually some touch-up paint that was in with my dad's gun stuff. This is a fast-drying nail polish, and I think he just had that in there if he got like a nick in the bluing on the gun or something. You just put a little black nail polish in there instead of worrying about it rusting. So I did a little experimenting, and this particular brass was actually used from a company that makes bathroom stuff, including faucets and things. So they literally cast their own brass. This is a, what do you call it? You know, safe to drink water through kind of a brass. And I think what happens when I was electro-engraving it was actually pulling more zinc away, leaving more copper, because the pattern that I did on here, again, using my vinyl cutter, just cut a little pattern, and then basically did my engraving right through it. So I used the vinyl, cut a pattern, and then stuck it on there. And then I did the basically a wet pad dipped in salt water, run some current through here from the battery charger, and that's how I did the engraving on there. And really a pretty cool effect. So right here you can see it's sort of a light color on the saltwater pad. So I think it was kind of extracting more of the zinc, leaving it the brass a little more coppery. But I did a little bit of experimenting here with the stencil, different voltages, different strengths of salt water. The second one, I literally used pickle juice. I was going to mix together some salt water in the kitchen, and right there in the fridge is pickle juice. And I'm like, wait, that's just salt water with like garlic. So I literally used pickle juice on the second one. So here I covered up the engraving I already did. I did a new little stencil with the vinyl. Just took a shop rag, dipped in the pickle juice, and then start running some current through here with the positive ground on the brass. And with the pickle juice, it came through a little different. The color was a little different, and I don't know exactly why. I was also experimenting with the voltage a little bit. You can drive a fair amount of current through. I think I was able to get like 5 amps at one point, which is actually enough where like the metal starts getting warm in your hand doing that, which I thought was kind of cool. So that was my experimenting with doing some engraving on brass, and my whole idea was to be able to engrave that 22 rifle. And so far I haven't done anything with it. 2 reasons. One is I want to do it right the first time. I don't want to screw it up. And the second is I'm not really sure exactly what I want to engrave on there. I want to do something in memory, but how do you have one simple symbol represent a person's lifetime or your relationship with them? And frankly, I think this is exactly the same reason why I don't have any tattoos, because I would have no idea what I would want to get as a tattoo. I mean, I'd get one thing and then I'd be like, well, but that just means this one thing, so I've never done something like get a tattoo, because I think it would be really hard to get down to just one really meaningful image. So that's still a little bit up in the air. I might still engrave that gun. I might not. I'm not really sure at this point, but just doing the experiment of doing some engraving on this this hunk of brass here, just that by itself was really interesting, and even photographing it is kind of cool. I've got a orange sweatshirt that I wear a lot when I'm just like working in the shop, so you can see right here the reflection. That's what I was wearing when I took this photo. Whereas for photos like this, I'm actually holding up a piece of white tag board to make it reflect, because a lot of photography of shiny objects, it's not about the object, it's about what you're reflecting. And this looks really cool, reflecting white. But again, you can see how this engraving actually looks a little bit different than this engraving, just based on the saltwater solution that I was using. So here I've got it tilted away, so it's reflecting dark instead of light. And it looks different. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so here reflecting something black. But definitely a fun experiment. I still want to do some more engraving in the future. It was very cool to do that. Here's probably some of my first photos of possums, because that's the other thing I've gotten into lately, was feeding the backyard animals. I was feeding peanuts to the chipmunks, and then at night peanuts would disappear. I'm like, okay, who's eating the peanuts? So I'd stay up late and watch, and we're getting raccoons and possums, but frankly more possums than raccoons. And I had no idea we had this many possums in the area, but they come by my porch at night, and so I put out more food. So now I have more possums coming to my porch at night. Oh gosh. I also did a fun little project where I took an old Nintendo light zapper and I turned it into a real laser zapper because I could. I thought it'd be neat to be able to do. Built a candy launcher with my daughter for Halloween. Actually, here's the jack-o'-lantern that she made. And then here's me working on that Nintendo light zapper. I had some those low voltage, just cheapy little laser diodes. And basically the switch mechanism in a Nintendo light zapper is like perfect for what I wanted to do. I just wanted like a laser dot that would appear for a second. Perfect mechanism. So I loaded it up with a laser diode and also a rechargeable 18650 battery, lithium battery, right in the handle. And I also rigged it up with USB for both charging and output. So I've got this laser in there. The battery powers the laser, but then I've also got these little boards here that charge the battery and provide a 5-volt USB out from the battery as well. So I can literally charge my cell phone from my 1980s Nintendo light zapper. And how this project kind of got started was I had an idea for a like a mechanical shooting gallery, and started playing around with some ideas for that with relays and some other parts that I had kicking around. And this is the sort of thing that normally I would want to put a lot of time into and then put it on like instructables.com, for example, doing like a step-by-step, here's how to do it kind of a thing. But it was really fun just taking like this old light zapper and turning it into an honest to goodness, real laser gun. And it's pretty easy to use with photo sensors, where you could have like an Arduino measuring brightness. So you shoot it with the laser and then something happens based on the programming of the microcontroller, like having a sound effect play or a little dog pop up and laugh at you or whatever it is. Here we go. You got so there's the light zapper right there. And here is my back porch at night. And nighttime animals absolutely demolish peanuts and make a crazy, enormous mess. There's a possum. Hard to take photos of at night because the frame rate is so low. It's almost impossible not to get motion blur. Later, I did play around a little bit with a game cam and a better camera and some things like that. Here's a couple of raccoons. Here we go, some other camera settings. Possums eating corn, eating peanuts. But frankly, the whole COVID thing and my dad dying and everything else, nice to have something a little lighter in a person's life. And frankly, it's been a lot of fun just putting out some food, watching the animals come by. They're funny. Possums are not graceful at all. They're clumsy animals, but they're misunderstood. They're really a lot of fun to watch. So it's been kind of cool getting to do that. And then it was Thanksgiving. So I thought, it's been a tough year, but at the same time, we still all have a lot to be grateful for. So I thought I'd put out a Thanksgiving dinner for the possum. And so I did actually film that, and I did that as a YouTube video. There's been a couple of nights where we've had multiple possums out there, which here, possum and a couple of raccoons. The possum kind of sneaks around behind the raccoons. Pretty fun to watch. They're just cool, weird little animals. They got these little pink fingers. That's not a bad photo there. Oh, and then I was, all the Black Friday sales start coming. And back when I was at the toy fair in February, those snap ships, my sister's been a graphic designer for that project, and I actually saw these in a flyer from the big box store, and just kind of cool to see that. I built a candy launcher with my daughter. I put that on YouTube. I did take my daughter out to shoot the rifle. She had a BB gun. She had fun with that, but cocking the BB gun was actually just a little bit hard for her. And this 22 rifle is actually it's the same style, except it's an honest to goodness firearm. So of course we're out doing it properly, paying attention to safety precautions, everything like that. But she actually enjoyed using this more because it was just so much easier for her to cycle the mechanism on it. And I thought that was pretty cool, just to get to take my daughter out and do something that like my dad and I would have, way back in the day. So she had fun getting to do that. And this was a place where, yeah, now I'm going to get all sad here, because this was a place where she would go fishing with my dad, which was a really cool thing for her to be able to do. So the other thing is, not too long ago, I did a second sort of a semi-group buy kind of a project. This time it was with some used solar panels, but a really good price. So I got 2 pallets full of these, and they are big and heavy. And unfortunately, at this point, the people who I all had lined up for getting solar panels, no one's picking them up right now. One of them is a Yurt guy who I don't think he knows exactly what he wants. He did give me a deposit, but beyond that, things have been kind of up in the air a lot. So I now have a bunch of solar panels stacked in my garage, taking up space, making it really hard to work on other projects, getting the tractor done, things like that. So I was able to move one stack of these one at a time, which was just about impossible for me to do. It just killed my shoulder and everything. But at least I have a little bit more space. And what I would love to do is, these are essentially 30-volt panels. And if you run 2 of them in series, if we look here, the voltage at maximum power, it's right about 30 volts. And if you put 2 of them in series, you get 60 volts. And 60 volts, if you divide it by 4, is 15. So essentially, on a 40-volt system, a pair of these panels is the right voltage for charging a 48-volt system. If you imagine a 12-volt battery, you need to charge it up to, 12.8, 12.9 volts, whatever it is you're going for. But you need to charge higher than that. So like 13.8 volts, 14.1, 14.4, something like that. And 15 volts will get you any of those. You use a charge controller, of course. But these panels, they're not really good for charging a 12-volt battery, but they'd be perfect for a 24 or 48-volt battery pack. And earlier, when I was talking about the one guy who had some of that solar equipment, boy, if he and I just split these, we could build a pair of solar trailers, and each of them would be powerful enough to run a person's entire house off of. So here I've just got one panel set out in the sun, and it's running 36 volts. It'd be lower if it was under a load, but just open voltage, yeah, like 36 volts. Inexpensive solar panels because they're used. Here's some more possums. Possums are hilarious because they can't stand on their hind feet, but they can still use their hands, but just one at a time, because if they used both, they'd fall on their face. So they'll take one hand, they'll be like, and eat apples or peanuts or hot dogs, whatever you want to give them. There's some raccoons. More fun with raccoons. Now, getting back to that Mitsubishi, I did some work. I pulled off the front, the bumper cover. I took a look at straightening out the bumper. I was actually able to remove it, straighten it out, put it back on. I still have really mixed feelings. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. The car, it doesn't have a salvage title. It could be fixed up and just driven. Actually, there was one dent on it that I just wanted to pull, and I didn't really have a good way of doing that, but I did have a chain. And on the 2012 Moo edition, I've got a nice 2-inch hitch on there, so I just put a chain from my one electric car to the metal that I wanted to pull out the dent on the other electric car, and just pulled, and it bent it right out. It was great. I also played around with trying to fix the plastic there. I just took a hairdryer and heated it up as best I could, just kind of bent it back, and I was able to get the major dents out, but it's cut straight through. There's not really any way to fix that. Maybe bend a piece of aluminum behind it, rivet it on, something like that. I don't think Bondo or anything's really going to work with it, though. It's too flexible. Ideally, it just needs a new bumper cover, but since the Mitsubishi iMiEV is just not a common car, that's a hard part to find, because it's not a thing just sitting around in junkyards, whereas like a Chevy Volt, a Nissan Leaf, something like that, parts would be pretty easy to get. Here's a possum eating peanuts. Yes, this is what I do in the evening for fun. Eating hot dogs, put out some applesauce for him. Just kind of fun little animals. Another thing I did was when I had the bumper off the Mitsubishi iMiEV, I kind of needed to see how things were exactly. And what I could do was I was able to take the bumper cover off of my good car and just compare the two to see how everything was. And I thought, well, since I'm doing this, I should check out that heater that I put in that car. That was 3 years ago now. So here behind the metal bumper, we've got that heater that I installed, and that connects through some insulated radiator hose, and it comes up into the heating system on the car. So when I had the bumper off, I checked that out. I did shoot a little video. That's something else that I want to make a video of and post sometime soon. And I used the thermal camera. It wasn't great here because the front of the car was in the sun, which kind of messes things up when you have a cold day but sunny. But it was interesting to see that the heater still looked like it was in really good condition. Nothing wrong with it. Everything worked fine. Now, at this point in photos, we're getting back to where I was finally able to start making YouTube videos again. Videos on the tractor and the Nissan Leaf motor, the VCU, regenerative braking, things like that. So this is kind of starting to get us caught back up again. Here's the Thanksgiving dinner that I put out for the possum. I did have one comment on the YouTube video where somebody's like, "It's Thanksgiving. What about all those homeless people out there? And you're giving perfectly good food to animals." I'm like, yeah, it was $1.59 and it was a special treat for a possum. Why would homeless people be watching my videos anyways? Because that's the thing. The guy was like, "Oh yeah, there's some homeless person watching this," and like, yeah, okay. I think the possum can have one little cheapy TV dinner. Except they did not like peas. Possums do not like peas. Strangest thing. Go figure. Here we go. So here's a little bit more possum for you. That's the big one. We got a couple of big possums, one pretty small one. Fun to watch. And the rest of this, we're kind of caught back up on the YouTube stuff. You know, I had a big DC motor I was taking a look at to see if maybe that would work for the tractor. Big, hard for me to move around. Got to use an engine hoist for it, that sort of thing. But I'm just kind of finally now getting back into doing things like working on the tractor, figuring out this electric stuff. And if, frankly, this video at this point is way too long, I have no idea how much of this you have or haven't watched. But it's been an interesting year, and I hope you've seen some things on here that you go, "Oh, that's cool. I'm looking forward to that." Or, "Oh, this is why you didn't do that thing," or whatever it is. We also spent a little bit of money to buy a heated water bowl. So over the winter, we can keep some of the animals outside watered. Kind of fun just watching this possum drinking out of the heated water bowl, because at this time, if I put a bowl of water out, it turns into ice, and hard to drink ice. Wow, okay, that catches us up. This is this is my last photo on here. Was I am starting to work a bit again, but now some of it too is like I need a COVID test, or I have to email in a photo of a thermometer before I go work and stuff like that. So it's still a weird world, and um, it's getting to the end of 2020, and we had an election, and we're going to have a new president in January, and hopefully, we're coming out with inoculations and all that sort of thing. But it's a very strange year, and I feel like I'm terribly rambling, and my original intent of this video was just to do like a little quick catch up, and at this point it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and I have no idea what I'm doing here. I think I'm just talking to the internet. I'm talking to the void to get some things out that I don't have a different way of getting out right now. But we're all just human, and sometimes we need to do that. One last thing. So the funny thing now recently is today is December 6th. In some parts of the country, people celebrate St. Nicholas Day. You put out the stocking, get some little presents in it. And my wife and daughter got me this. So I happen to drink coffee, and the Possums have been interesting lately. So they got me this hilarious coffee cup. So that was my little highlight today. So, it's been a crazy year, but we all do still have, things to look forward to, things to be grateful for. So with that, best to you and yours. Enjoy the holiday season. Christmas, Hanukkah, winter solstice, whatever you're into. God bless. And until next time, I'll say stay charged up, but we all got to get our little boost from somewhere. So here you go. I'll leave you with some possum photos. Happy Possum. Possum? Happy Possum Christmas? I don't know. Chunky possum makes everybody smile.